Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the cold metal chair, her hands folded on the smooth table surface. Around her, the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with alien voices, speaking in dozens of languages. The massive dome above them showed the stars beyond. Nexus Prime, but Sarah's mind was not on the beauty of space. She was thinking about home. She was thinking about Earth and the secret it had kept for 50 years. The Zephyrian representative stood tall at the center of the room. His blue skin glowed under the bright lights, and his forearms moved as he spoke. Zektar was his name, and he was angry. Very angry. The human colonies must be given to the Zephyrian Empire, Zektar said, his voice booming through the chamber. New Geneva, Haven's Rest, and Prosperity Station. These worlds belong to us now. The humans can leave or they can face the consequences. Sarah watched the other aliens in the room. The lizard-like Krillians nodded their approval. They loved war and conquest. The floating Vorten delegates whispered among themselves, their tentacles moving like underwater plants. Even the peaceful Etherians seemed worried. They all thought the same thing. Humans were weak. For 50 years, humanity had played this role perfectly. They were the traders, the negotiators, the ones who carried goods between worlds and made deals. Human ships were slow and clumsy compared to alien vessels. Human weapons were simple projectile launchers and basic energy beams. Human soldiers were soft creatures who needed suits to survive in space. At least that's what everyone believed. Sarah stood up slowly. The room grew quiet. Even Zektar stopped speaking to look at her. She was small compared to most aliens in the room, barely reaching the chest of the shortest Krillian. Her brown hair was tied back simply, and she wore the plain gray uniform of the Human Diplomatic Corps. The colonies you speak of are home to over 10 million humans, Sarah said. Her voice was calm and clear. They have been there for 30 years. They have built cities, farms, and schools. These are not empty worlds to be given away. Zektar's forearms spread wide. Humans are weak. Your ships are slow. Your weapons are toys. You have no real military force. The Zephyrian Empire has 1,000 warships. What do humans have? Trading vessels and cargo haulers. Laughter filled the chamber. The Krillians slammed their clawed hands on their tables. The Vorthons made clicking sounds that passed for amusement in their culture. Even some of the smaller species that usually stayed quiet were chuckling. Sarah smiled. It was a small, sad smile that none of the aliens understood. If only they knew what was hidden in the cargo holds of those trading vessels. If only they knew what those slow human ships really were underneath their false hulls. We are a peaceful people, Sarah said. We prefer trade to war, but we will not abandon our colonies. Then you will watch them burn, Zektar replied. The Zephyrian fleet will move in 7 days. Your people can leave, or they can die with their worlds. The session ended with the usual ceremony. Aliens filed out in their groups, speaking in Sci-Fi, their own languages. Sarah remained seated, waiting until the chamber was almost empty. Then she touched the small device hidden under her jacket collar. Admiral, she whispered so quietly that only the hidden transmitter could pick up her voice. I heard everything, Ambassador, came the reply in her earpiece. The voice belonged to Admiral Marcus Rivera, though no one in the galaxy knew his real rank. To the rest of the universe, he was Captain Rivera, master of the cargo vessel Wandering. Star, are we ready? Sarah asked. We've been ready for 50 years, Marcus replied. The question is, are they ready for us? 3,000 light years away? The Wandering Star drifted through space like any other cargo ship. Its hull was painted with rust stains and meteor damage that made it look old and harmless. Inside, the crew moved with the casual efficiency of experienced merchants. They loaded and unloaded containers, ran maintenance checks, and complained about the poor pay just like any civilian crew would do. But if someone could see through the ship's disguised outer hull, they would discover something very different. The Wandering Star was actually the CNS Retribution, humanity's newest and most powerful dreadnought. Its true weapons were hidden behind fake cargo containers. Its real engines were concealed within the framework of what looked like old-fashioned chemical thrusters. Its armor was disguised to look like simple steel plating, but it could withstand the impact of antimatter warheads. Admiral Marcus Rivera stood in what appeared to be the ship's simple bridge. To any outside observer, it looked like the control room of a basic freighter. But Marcus could see the hidden displays that showed him the real status of his ship. He could access weapons systems that the galaxy had never seen before. He commanded a crew of 300 highly trained military personnel who had spent years pretending to be civilian traders. "Status report," Marcus said quietly. "All systems green, Admiral," replied Commander Lisa Park, his first officer. To the universe, she was just the ship's navigator. In reality, she was one of the most experienced combat officers in human space. "The fleet is in position." Marcus nodded. Around them, scattered across dozens of star systems, more than 200 ships just like theirs waited. Each one looked like a civilian vessel. Each one was actually a warship in disguise. Cargo haulers were really troop transports. Mining ships were actually mobile weapons platforms. Research vessels were command and control centers. "And the installations?" Marcus asked. "Ready for activation," Park replied. "All 47 bases are fully operational." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. For 50 years, humanity had been building those bases. Every time they established a mining operation on some distant asteroid, they were actually constructing a hidden military facility. Every research station they put in orbit around gas giants was really a weapons platform. Every communication relay they placed at jump points was actually a sensor array and missile launcher. The aliens thought humans were industrious but harmless. They saw humans digging mines and building stations, and approved of their work ethic. They never suspected that humanity was militarizing every system they touched. "Contact Fleet Command," Marcus ordered. "Tell Admiral Chen Wei that Ambassador Chen has given us the word. Operation Revelation begins in 6 days." On Earth, in a bunker deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Admiral Chen Wei received the message. She was Sarah's older sister, though few people knew of the connection. While Sarah had spent decades learning alien languages and cultures, Chen Wei had been preparing for war. The Earth Defense Command Center looked like something from humanity's ancient past and distant future combined. The walls were carved from living rock, but they held displays showing every corner of human space. Thousands of officers worked at stations that monitored ships, bases, and installations across 50 star systems. "Admiral," her aide said, approaching with a data pad. "The Zephyrian Empire is mobilizing their battle fleet. Intelligence says they're pulling ships from 5 sectors to build an attack force." Chen Wei studied the numbers. The Zephyrians were bringing 300 warships to attack the human colonies. It was a massive force by alien standards. Most species would surrender rather than face such overwhelming power. Most species were not human. "How many ships are they expecting us to have?" Chen Wei asked. "Based on their intelligence reports, they think we have maybe 50 civilian vessels that could be converted to fight," her aide replied. "They're not taking any chances, though. 300 to 50 are good odds for them." Chen Wei walked to the main display screen. It showed human space as the aliens saw it, a small collection of peaceful colonies connected by trade routes. But with a gesture, she changed the view. The real human presence appeared on the screen like a hidden constellation coming into view. The truth was staggering. Humanity had not just 50 ships, they had over 800 fully operational warships hidden throughout the galaxy. They didn't just have 12 colonies. They had military installations in 47 star systems. They weren't just traders and miners. They were the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen, and no one knew it existed. "Begin Phase 1, Chen Wei ordered. "Send the activation codes to all sleeper installations. It's time to wake up the fleet." Across human space, the transformation began. On the mining station orbiting Kepler 442b, workers received coded messages that changed everything. The station's outer shell split apart like a flower opening, revealing the weapons and armor that had been hidden inside for 20 years. What had looked like a simple mining facility was actually a fortress capable of defending an entire star system. On the cargo ship Steady Progress, Captain Janet Torres looked at the message from Fleet Command and smiled. She had been hauling supplies between colonies for 15 years, watching alien ships ignore her completely. Now she pressed a hidden button on her command chair, and her ship began to change. The false outer hull peeled away in sections, revealing the sleek lines of a heavy cruiser. The fake cargo containers opened to show missile launchers and energy weapons. The civilian crew quarters folded back to reveal marine barracks and fighter bays. In 10 minutes, the steady progress had become the CNS Retribution's hammer, a ship capable of destroying anything in its path. The same transformation happened on 200 ships throughout the galaxy. Freighters became destroyers, mining vessels became battle cruisers. Research ships became carriers launching squadrons of fighters that had been disguised as survey drones. But the ships were only part of humanity's secret. The real surprise was what they had built on the ground. On the human colony of New Geneva, the first world the Zephyrians planned to attack, Governor Patricia Walsh stood in her office looking out at the city below. It looked peaceful enough: houses, schools, farms, and the spaceport where civilian ships landed daily. But Patricia knew what lay beneath. Every human colony had been built with defense in mind. The beautiful parks were actually camouflaged missile sites. The pleasant residential districts had underground bunker networks that could shelter the entire population. The power plants were designed to overload and create massive electromagnetic pulses that would disable enemy ships. Even the farms were part of the defense system, growing food that could last for years under siege. "Governor," her aide said, entering the office, "we've received the activation order from Fleet Command." "Good," Patricia replied. "Signal all department heads. Tell them it's time for the citizens to learn what we've really been building here." The colonists had always known their worlds might be attacked someday. That's why every human citizen over the age of 16 had basic military training. That's why every city had hidden weapons storage. That's why every family had emergency plans that could put them in defensive positions within an hour. What the colonists didn't know was how extensive their defenses really were. They were about to find out. As word spread through the colonies, a different kind of transformation began. Civilian authorities revealed their military ranks. Teachers and farmers and shop owners opened hidden supply caches and put on uniforms. Children who had thought they were playing games during their emergency drills realized they had been learning real military procedures. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest deception had not been hiding their weapons or their ships. It had been hiding their nature. Every human was a potential soldier. Every colony was a fortress. Every peaceful trader was a warrior waiting for the signal to fight. In 6 days, the Zephyrian Empire would attack what they thought were defenseless human settlements. Instead, they would find themselves facing the largest and most prepared military force the galaxy had ever seen. But first, humanity had to finish waking up from 50 years of pretending to sleep. The deception of peace was ending. Soon, the galaxy would see what humans really were when they chose to stop hiding their true nature. The moment was coming when humanity would reveal their true military force. And when that happened, the galaxy would tremble in silence. The attack on New Geneva came exactly when the Zephyrians said it would. Fleet Commander Vexrath led 60 warships through the jump point at the edge of the system, expecting to find a few human cargo vessels and maybe some old defensive satellites. What he found instead changed everything. The galaxy thought they knew about humanity. The first sign that something was wrong came from his sensor officer. "Commander, I'm reading strange energy signatures from the human ships in the system." Vexrath looked at the display screen. There were 12 human vessels scattered throughout New Geneva's orbital space. They looked like the usual collection of freighters and passenger ships that humans used for trade. Nothing threatening. "Strange how?" he asked. "The power readings are much higher than they should be," the sensor officer replied. "And their hull configurations are changing." Before Vexrath could respond, the human ships began to transform. Hull plates slid apart and fell away like discarded clothing. Fake cargo containers opened to reveal weapon systems. Engine sections extended and showed their true power. In minutes, what had looked like a small collection of civilian vessels had become a battle fleet. "Impossible," Vexrath whispered. The lead human ship, which had been called the Wandering Star on their identification transponder, now broadcast a different signal. CNS Retribution. As Vexrath watched, the ship's true form was revealed. It was massive, easily twice the size it had appeared to be. Weapons ports opened along its hull like eyes opening in the dark. The ship that had looked like a simple cargo hauler was actually larger than his own flagship. All ships battle formation, Vexrath ordered. Prepare to engage the human fleet. But as his ships moved into their attack positions, more surprises appeared. The asteroid mining station that had been quietly operating in the system's belt suddenly lit up with energy. What they had thought was a simple mining platform was actually a fortress bristling with weapons. It was built into one of the largest asteroids in the belt, and now that asteroid was moving toward his fleet under its own power. "Commander," his navigation officer called out. "The mining station is not a station. It's a mobile weapons platform." More signals appeared on the sensors. Human ships were coming from everywhere. From behind moons, from within the asteroid belt, from positions they couldn't have reached unless they had been hiding there for months. What had looked like 12 civilian vessels was actually a fleet of 47 warships that had been camouflaged and waiting. Admiral Marcus Rivera stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the Zephyrian fleet realize their mistake. For 50 years, he had waited for this moment. For 50 years, humanity had prepared for the day when they would have to reveal their true nature to the galaxy. "Admiral," his weapons officer reported, "all ships are ready to engage. The Zephyrians have stopped advancing. I think they're trying to figure out what they're looking at." Marcus nodded. "Open a communication channel to the Zephyrian commander." The main screen flickered and showed Vexrath's blue face. The Zephyrian's four eyes were wide with shock and confusion. "What is this?" he demanded. "Where did these ships come from?" "The same place they've always been, Commander Vexrath," Marcus replied calmly. "You just weren't looking hard enough to see them." "This is impossible. Human ships are slow and weak. Your weapons are primitive." Marcus smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "You're about to learn that we've been lying to you for 50 years. Did you really think a species could spread across 50 star systems using cargo haulers and good intentions?" Before Vexrath could respond, Marcus gave the order that would change galactic history. "All ships, weapons free. Show them what humans really are." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Human ships moved with a precision and coordination that seemed impossible. They used the gravity of planets and moons to slingshot themselves at incredible speeds. They hid behind asteroids and emerged at exactly the right moment to strike. They fought like predators that had been studying their prey for decades. The Zephyrian ships were built for straightforward combat, powerful weapons and heavy armor meeting in direct conflict. But the humans didn't fight that way. They struck from unexpected angles and disappeared before the Zephyrians could respond. They used the environment of the star system like a weapon, drawing enemy ships into asteroid fields where they could be trapped and destroyed. Commander Vexrath watched, his fleet being torn apart by tactics he didn't understand. "How are they moving like that?" he shouted at his tactical officer. "No ship can maneuver that way." But human ships could, because they had been designed by a species that had learned warfare on a world that tried to kill them every day. Earth had taught humans to use every advantage, to turn weakness into strength, to survive by being smarter and more adaptable than anything they faced. The Retribution demonstrated this perfectly. Instead of trading shots with Zephyrian battleships, it used its superior maneuverability to get behind them. Its weapons were not just energy beams and missiles. They were gravitational disruptors that could tear a ship apart from the inside out. They were quantum torpedoes that existed in several dimensions at once and couldn't be stopped by normal shields. In 30 minutes, the Zephyrian attack fleet was destroyed. 60 warships that had come to conquer a human colony were reduced to debris and emergency escape pods. Not a single human ship was lost, but the revelation at New Geneva was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Every human mining operation revealed itself as a military base. Every research station powered up weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. The archaeological expedition in the Kepler sector became Forward Operating Base Kepler, a massive installation that had been disguised as ruins for 20 years. The most shocking revelation came at the neutron star called Charybdis. For 15 years, humans had maintained a research station in orbit around the collapsed star, claiming they were studying its unique properties. Alien scientists had thought it was a waste of time. Neutron stars were well understood, and the radiation around Charybdis made it dangerous to approach. Now the research station revealed its true nature. It was a weapons platform that used the neutron star's incredible gravitational field as a power source. When Zephyrian reinforcement fleets tried to jump through the Charybdis system, they found their ships caught in artificial gravity wells that could crush a battleship like an empty can. The weapons fired beams of concentrated gravitational force that could bend space-time itself. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the supposed head of the Charybdis research project, stood in the station's command center watching Zephyrian ships being pulled apart by forces they couldn't understand or escape. For 15 years she had published papers about neutron star physics while secretly building the most powerful weapon in known space. "Gravitational torpedo ready," her weapons officer reported. "Fire," Elena ordered. The torpedo was invisible to normal sensors. It was a bubble of twisted space-time that moved at nearly the speed of light. When it reached the Zephyrian flagship, it didn't explode in any conventional sense. Instead, it created a gravity well so intense that the ship was compressed into a sphere less than a meter across in the space of microseconds. The other Zephyrian ships fled immediately. News of the defeats spread through galactic communication networks faster than the battles themselves. Species that had dismissed humans as weak traders suddenly realized they had been sharing the galaxy with predators. The slow, human expansion across 50 star systems had not been the gradual spread of peaceful colonists. It had been a carefully planned military operation that had taken half a century to complete. On the Krillian homeworld, War Marshal Tekvar studied battle recordings with growing amazement and fear. The Krillians prided themselves on being the galaxy's greatest warriors. They had conquered dozens of systems through pure military might. But watching human tactics was like seeing a completely different approach to warfare. "They don't fight with honor," observed Sub-Marshal Kretok. "They use deception and trickery." Tekvar shook his massive reptilian head. "They fight to win. Honor is a luxury for species that can afford to lose battles. Humans cannot afford to lose, so they have learned to fight in ways we never considered." The recording showed human ships using asteroid fields like three-dimensional mazes, appearing and disappearing in ways that seemed to violate the laws of physics. They showed human weapons that worked on principles the galaxy's scientists didn't understand. Most disturbing of all, they showed a level of coordination between human forces that suggested they had been planning these battles for decades. "How long have they been preparing for this?" Kretok asked. "Since the day they joined the Galactic Council," Tekvar replied grimly. "Maybe longer. I think we have been studying the wrong species, Sub-Marshal. We thought the humans were sheep, but they are wolves. Very patient wolves." On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber, all talking at once in their various languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the flood of frightened voices. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in her usual seat, listening to the chaos around her. Species that had ignored humans for 50 years were now demanding explanations. The Vorthan Confederacy wanted to know how many ships humanity really had. The Etherian Collective was asking about defensive treaties. Even the proud Stellar Republic was quietly inquiring about trade agreements. Council Speaker Morden, an ancient being whose species had founded the Council thousands of years ago, finally called for order. "Ambassador Chen," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "The Council demands answers. How long has humanity been deceiving us about your military capabilities?" Sarah stood slowly. She looked around the chamber at dozens of alien faces, all staring at her with mixtures of fear, anger, and respect that had never been there before. "We have never lied to this council," she said clearly. "We told you we were a peaceful people. We are. We told you we preferred trade to war. We do. We told you we wanted to coexist with all species in harmony. That is still true. But your ships," shouted the Zephyrian representative who had replaced Zektar. Your weapons, your hidden bases." "We told you we would defend ourselves," Sarah replied. "Did you think we were bluffing?" The chamber fell silent. For 50 years, humanity had been saying exactly that. They had repeatedly stated that they would not be driven from their homes, that they would protect their colonies, that they valued peace but would fight if necessary. The galaxy had chosen to hear only the parts about peace and trade. They had ignored the warnings about human determination and the willingness to fight. Speaker Morden spoke into the silence. "What does humanity want now?" Sarah looked at him, steadily. "The same thing we have always wanted. To be left alone to live our lives in peace, but now you know the price of disturbing that peace." The message was clear. Humanity had revealed their true strength not to conquer, but to ensure they would never again be threatened. They had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, so that no one would make the mistake of thinking humans were easy prey. As the session ended and aliens filed out of the chamber, many of them were looking at Sarah Chen with new eyes. She was no longer just the representative of a minor trading species. She was the ambassador of a military power that had been hiding in plain sight for half a century. The silent fleet had awakened and the galaxy would never be the same. War Marshal Tekvar had seen battle recordings from 100 different species across 2 centuries of conflict. He had studied the combat tactics of the Vorthan Confederacy with their swarm attacks. He had analyzed the methodical siege warfare of the Stellar Republic. He had even learned from the chaotic but effective raids of the pirate clans that operated in the outer systems. But watching the humans fight was like discovering a completely new form of warfare. The Krillian sat in his private study aboard the battleship Razor's Edge, playing the same battle recording for the 20th time. On the screen, human ships moved through the new Geneva system like predators that had been born in space. They didn't just fight, they hunted. "Computer, slow the playback to quarter speed," he commanded. The recording showed a human cruiser, one that had been disguised as a mining ship until the battle began, approaching a Zephyrian destroyer. The Zephyrian ship was larger and more heavily armed, but it was being led into a trap so subtle that Tekvar had missed it the first dozen times he watched. The human ship was using the gravity field of New Geneva's largest moon to alter its trajectory in ways that looked random but were actually perfectly calculated. The Zephyrian captain thought he was chasing a fleeing enemy. Instead, he was being positioned exactly where the humans wanted him. When the trap was sprung, 3 more human ships appeared from behind the moon's shadow. They had been waiting there, engines powered down, invisible to sensors. The Zephyrian destroyer was destroyed in seconds, caught in a crossfire it couldn't escape. "Magnificent," Tekvar whispered. His aide, Sub-Marshal Kretok, looked up from his own study pad. "Marshal, did you say something?" "The humans," Tekvar replied. "Watch this recording, Kretok. Tell me what you see." The younger Krillian studied the screen as the recording played again. "I see human ships using deception and ambush tactics. Dishonorable combat." Tekvar's scales clicked together in what passed for laughter among his species. "You see with Krillian eyes, Sub-Marshal. We value direct confrontation, warrior against warrior. But look at the results. 4 human ships destroyed a Zephyrian destroyer with no losses. How many Krillian ships would we lose in the same engagement?" Kretok considered this. "Fighting with honor? Probably 2 ships lost, maybe 3 to achieve the same result." "Exactly." Tekvar paused the recording and highlighted the tactical display. "The humans do not fight for honor. They fight to win, and they are very, very good at winning." The War Marshal had requested every piece of battle data the Krillian intelligence services could gather. What he found painted a picture of human warfare that was both fascinating and terrifying. Humans didn't just defeat their enemies. They studied them, predicted their behavior, and turned their strengths into weaknesses. "Look at this engagement in the Tau Ceti system," Tekvar said, bringing up another recording. "The Zephyrians sent a fast attack squadron of 30 ships to strike a human supply convoy. Standard raid tactics. Hit hard and fast. Destroy the cargo vessels. Retreat before reinforcements arrive." The recording showed the Zephyrian ships dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. ready to tear apart what they expected to be defenseless human freighters. Instead, they found the convoy formation falling apart in apparent panic, with cargo ships scattering in all directions. The Zephyrian commander thought he had achieved perfect surprise. Tekvar continued. His ships spread out to chase down individual cargo vessels. Classic pursuit formation. Kretok watched as the Zephyrian ships separated to hunt down the fleeing humans. They fell for a trap. A beautiful trap, Tekvar agreed. The human cargo ships were not running away. They were moving into predetermined positions. When the Zephyrians were spread out and isolated from each other, the cargo vessels revealed their true nature. The supposed cargo ships shed their false hulls and became warships. But more importantly, they had led the Zephyrian raiders into a kill zone that had been prepared in advance. Hidden weapon platforms powered up throughout the system. Mines that had been disguised as space debris activated. The Zephyrian squadron found itself trapped in a carefully prepared killing field. 30 Zephyrian ships destroyed, Tekvar said. 0 human losses. The entire battle lasted less than 20 minutes. Kretok stared at the recording in amazement. How did they know the attack was coming? That is the most disturbing part, Tekvar replied. I believe they didn't know. I believe they prepared for this exact scenario months or even years in advance, then waited for someone to be foolish enough to trigger the trap. The War Marshal brought up a tactical analysis that showed human defensive positions throughout their territory. Every supply convoy traveled through systems that had been militarized in secret. Every trade route was protected by hidden weapon platforms and disguised warships. Every human settlement was surrounded by defenses that most species wouldn't build even around their homeworlds. They have turned their entire civilization into a weapon, Tekvar observed. Every merchant is a potential warrior. Every cargo ship is a potential warship. Every colony is a fortress. How does one fight an enemy like that? The question troubled him more than he wanted to admit. The Krillian hegemony had conquered half a sector through superior firepower and warrior courage. But human tactics made traditional warfare seem primitive and wasteful. They fought with their minds as much as their weapons, and their minds were clearly very dangerous things. On the human colony of Haven's Rest, Governor Michael Torres stood in what looked like the colony's emergency operations center. To visiting dignitaries and trade representatives, this room appeared to be a simple disaster response facility. It had displays showing weather patterns, supply levels, and civilian population centers. But behind the false walls and beneath the innocent-looking equipment, Haven's Rest contained one of the most sophisticated military command centers in human space. Governor Torres was not just a colonial administrator. He was General Torres, a veteran of humanity's secret military expansion who had been planning the defense of Haven's Rest for 15 years. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender requests from Zephyrian military units across 3 systems. They're asking for terms. Torres studied the tactical displays that showed the real situation throughout the region. What had started as Zephyrian attacks on 3 human colonies had become a complete rout. Human forces were systematically destroying every Zephyrian military asset they could find, and they were doing it with a level of coordination that shocked even their enemies. What kind of terms are they requesting? Torres asked. Full withdrawal from human space, recognition of human territorial claims, and... The communications officer paused. They're offering to share their military technology in exchange for a ceasefire. Torres almost smiled. Rejected. They attacked our civilians, they threatened our homes. The price for that is not technological data. It's complete surrender. The Zephyrians were learning what happened when you threatened humanity's children. Human parents did not negotiate with those who would harm their families. They eliminated the threat permanently. But Torres knew that military victory was only part of the message humanity was sending to the galaxy. The real lesson was in how they fought. Human warfare was not just about destroying enemies, it was about psychological impact. They wanted every potential aggressor to understand exactly what would happen if they chose to threaten human colonies. Sir, his tactical officer called out, the Zephyrian Reserve Fleet is requesting permission to retrieve survivors from their destroyed ships. Granted, Torres replied immediately. and make sure they get a clear view of our defenses when they come to collect their people. I want them to see exactly what they were fighting against. This was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of human warfare. Their mercy was as calculated as their violence. They allowed enemies to survive and escape, but only so those survivors could spread word of what human military forces were really capable of. Every rescued Zephyrian pilot would return home with stories of human ships that appeared from nowhere, of weapons that defied understanding, of defensive systems that turned entire star systems into fortresses. The psychological warfare was perhaps more effective than the physical destruction. Fear, Torres knew, was a weapon that never needed reloading. On Earth, Admiral Chen Wei monitored the battles from the Deep Space Command Center. The massive screens around her showed human forces engaging Zephyrian units across 12 star systems. Each engagement followed the same pattern: apparent human weakness, followed by devastating revelation of hidden strength. Admiral, her intelligence chief reported, "We're receiving communications intercepts from Krillian, Vorthon, and Stellar Republic forces. They're all trying to analyze our tactics." "What are they concluding?" Chen Wei asked. "The Krillians are impressed but disturbed by our lack of honorable combat. The Vorthons are trying to calculate how many ships we really have. The Stellar Republic is quietly updating their diplomatic protocols regarding humanity." Chen Wei nodded. This was exactly what humanity had planned. The revelation of their true military capacity was not meant just to defeat the Zephyrians. It was meant to educate the entire galaxy about the price of threatening human interests. And the smaller species? The Etherian Collective has requested a formal defense alliance. The Kepler Federation is asking about trade agreements for human military technology. The Outer Rim Trading Company wants to hire human ships as convoy escorts. Perfect. The galaxy was learning that humans were not victims to be preyed upon. They were powerful allies to be courted, and dangerous enemies to be avoided. Admiral, her strategic planning officer, approached with a data pad. "We have a problem. The Zephyrian Empire is mobilizing their Grand Armada. Over 1,000 ships from 5 sectors. They're not surrendering. They're escalating." Chen Wei looked at the intelligence reports. The Zephyrian Empire's pride had been wounded by their defeats, and they were responding the only way they knew how, with overwhelming force. Every warship they could gather was being sent to crush humanity once and for all. "How long until they reach our space?" she asked. 72 hours, Admiral. They're coming directly for Earth." Chen Wei smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Then they're going to learn the most important lesson about human warfare. We don't just hide our ships and bases from our enemies. We hide our homeworld's defenses too. She turned to her communications chief. "Send a message to all human forces throughout the galaxy. Tell them Operation Homecoming is now active. It's time to show the Zephyrians what Earth looks like when it stops pretending to be a peaceful world." The Zephyrians thought they were bringing overwhelming force to attack a lightly defended planet. They had no idea they were about to assault the most heavily fortified world in galactic history. Earth had been preparing for this moment since the day humanity first left their home system. The galaxy was about to witness the ultimate demonstration of human military art. And when it was over, no species would ever again mistake human patience for human weakness. Supreme Commander Zarthek stood on the command bridge of the massive battleship Infinite Glory, watching his fleet prepare for the final assault on Earth. Around him stretched the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, over 1,000 warships from the Zephyrian Empire's 5 sectors. Battleships the size of cities floated alongside swift destroyers and massive carriers loaded with fighter craft. This was the Grand Armada, the pride of Zephyrian military might. No force in the galaxy could stand against it, certainly not the humans, despite their recent tricks and surprises. "Supreme Commander," his tactical officer reported, "all fleet units are in position at the edge of the Sol system. We are ready to begin the attack on the human homeworld." Zarthek nodded, his forearms clasped behind his back as he studied the tactical display. Earth floated on the screen like a small blue-green jewel, looking peaceful and defenseless. Few orbital stations surrounded it, along with what appeared to be a modest collection of human ships, maybe 50 vessels total, nothing that could threaten his Grand Armada. The humans' tricks will not save them here, he declared to his bridge crew. They may have hidden warships throughout their territory, but this is their homeworld. There is nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Today we end the human problem forever. His communication officer spoke up. Supreme Commander, we are receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it on the main screen, Zarthek commanded. The display flickered and showed a human woman. In military uniform, she appeared to be middle-aged, with graying hair and calm eyes that showed no fear despite facing the largest fleet in galactic history. The nameplate on her uniform read, Admiral Chen Wei. Supreme Commander Zarthek, she said, in perfect Zephyrian. I am Admiral Chen Wei, Commander of Earth Defense Forces. You have brought an impressive fleet to our system. I have brought your destruction, human, Zarthek replied. Surrender now and we may allow some of your people to survive as slaves. Continue to resist, and we will burn your world to ash. Admiral Chen Wei smiled. It was a cold expression that made Zarthek uncomfortable for reasons he couldn't identify. Supreme Commander, before you begin your attack, I want to show you something. I think you should understand what you're really fighting against. Your words cannot change the outcome of this battle, Zarthek said dismissively. Words? No, probably not. But maybe a demonstration will help. Chen Wei gestured to someone off-screen. Computer, begin Earth Defense Network revelation sequence. On Zarthek's tactical display, new contacts began appearing throughout the Sol system. At first it was just a few additional ships powering up from what had looked like empty space. Then more contacts appeared. And more. What is this? Zarthek demanded of his sensor officer. Supreme Commander, I don't understand these readings. New ships are appearing everywhere. They were completely hidden from our sensors until now. The truth was staggering. What had looked like 50 human ships defending Earth was actually over 300 fully operational warships. They had been hiding using stealth technology that made them invisible to Zephyrian sensors. But that was only the beginning. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter began to light up with energy signatures. What the Zephyrians had assumed were ordinary chunks of rock were actually massive weapons platforms, each one the size of a moon and armed with firepower that dwarfed anything in Zarthek's fleet. Impossible, he whispered. But the revelations continued. The planet Mars itself began to change, its surface opening in dozens of locations to reveal missile silos and energy weapons. The supposedly dead world had been hollowed out and converted into a fortress. Even Jupiter's moons were showing energy signatures. They too had been militarized. Then the most shocking revelation came. Earth's moon began to split apart like an opening flower, revealing that it had been completely hollowed out and rebuilt. Inside was a construction facility the size of a planet, filled with ships under construction, manufacturing equipment, and weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. Dear ancestors, Zarthek breathed, the entire system is a fortress. Not just a fortress, Supreme Commander. Admiral Chen Wei's voice came from the screen. It's the most heavily defended system in galactic history. We've been preparing for this day since we first left Earth centuries ago. Every human who ever looked up at the stars knew that someday, someone would try to take our home from us. Zarthek's hands shook as he watched his tactical display fill with defensive installations. The humans hadn't just built normal defenses around their homeworld. They had turned the entire Sol system into a weapon. The sun itself showed artificial structures, massive solar collection arrays that could focus stellar energy into beams, capable of destroying entire fleets. How? He managed to ask. The same way we hid our ships throughout the galaxy, Chen Wei replied. We worked for centuries, little by little, always building, always preparing. Every asteroid we mined, every moon we surveyed, every space station we constructed, it was all part of the plan to defend our home. On the bridge of the infinite glory, alarm signals began to sound. Zarthek's fleet was surrounded by defensive systems that outgunned them 10-1. Worse, they were trapped. The same stealth technology that had hidden the human defenses was now being used to create artificial gravity fields that prevented his ships from jumping to hyperspace. "This is your last chance to surrender, Supreme Commander," Admiral Chen Wei said. "Order your fleet to power down weapons and prepare to be taken into custody. Your people will be treated well as prisoners of war." Zarthek's pride flared. The Zephyrian Empire does not surrender to inferior species. All ships, attack formation, destroy the human homeworld. The battle that followed became known as the Sol Massacre, though historians would argue for centuries about whether it could properly be called a battle at all. Zarthek's 1,000-ship fleet attacked Earth with everything they had. Energy weapons that could crack continents, missiles that could shatter moons, fighter craft that swarmed like angry insects. None of it mattered. The human defenses activated, in sequence, revealing technologies that most species had thought impossible. The weaponized asteroids fired gravitational disruptors that crushed Zephyrian ships like tin cans. Mars launched missiles that existed in several dimensions at once and couldn't be intercepted by conventional defenses. The Moon Fortress unleashed swarms of drone fighters that moved too fast for organic pilots to follow. But the most devastating weapon was the one that came from Earth's sun itself. The solar collection arrays focused stellar energy into coherent beams that struck with the power of a star. Zephyrian battleships simply vanished when hit by the solar lances, converted instantly from matter to energy. Admiral Chen Wei watched the destruction from Earth's primary command center, deep beneath the planet's surface. The facility had been carved from living rock centuries ago, designed to coordinate the defense of humanity's birth world. Around her, thousands of officers monitored every aspect of the battle. "Ma'am," her tactical officer reported, "the Zephyrian fleet is down to 400 ships. They're trying to retreat, but the gravity anchors are holding them in place." Chen Wei studied the battle display. The Sol Defense Network was performing exactly as designed, systematically destroying an invasion fleet while taking minimal damage in return. But she took no pleasure in the slaughter. This wasn't about revenge, it was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. "Open a channel to all Zephyrian ships," she ordered. Her communication across all frequencies reached every surviving Zephyrian vessel. "This is Admiral Chen Wei. You attacked our colonies, you threatened our families. You came to our home with the intention of committing genocide against our people. Now you see the price of that decision." On the Infinite Glory, Supreme Commander Zarthek watched his mighty fleet being torn apart by defenses he couldn't understand or counter. Ships that had taken decades to build were being destroyed in seconds. The pride of Zephyrian civilization was burning in the void around Earth. "Supreme Commander," his communication officer reported, his voice shaking with fear. "We're receiving surrender requests from our own ships. Half the fleet is asking permission to abandon the attack." Zarthek looked at the tactical display. 2/3 of his Grand Armada was already destroyed, and the human defenses showed no signs of weakening. If anything, they seemed to be getting stronger as more weapon systems came online. "All ships," he broadcast on the fleet command frequency, "retreat to hyperspace jump points." "We cannot, Supreme Commander," his navigation officer replied. "The humans have created artificial gravity fields throughout the system. Our jump drives are being interfered with. They were trapped and being systematically destroyed by defenses that had been centuries in the making." Zarthek realized with growing horror that this had always been humanity's plan. They had never intended to meet threats in deep space. They had intended to lure their enemies to Earth, where they could be destroyed completely. "Supreme Commander," came Admiral Chen Wei's voice over the communication system, "I'm going to give you one more chance. Order your remaining ships to surrender and your people will live. Continue fighting and I will activate the final phase of Sol's defenses. You will not want to see what that involves." Zarthek looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for his decision. These were warriors who had served the Zephyrian Empire faithfully for decades. They deserved better than to die in a hopeless battle against an enemy they had never truly understood. "All ships," he said quietly into his communicator, "power down weapons and prepare for surrender. The battle is over, but the defeat of the Grand Armada was not the end of humanity's demonstration." As Zephyrian ships powered down their weapons and prepared to surrender, Admiral Chen Wei activated one final system that had been hidden even from her own officers. Throughout human space, every star system that contained human colonies began to reveal additional defenses. What the galaxy had thought was humanity's full military strength had been only a fraction of their true capabilities. Hidden shipyards powered up and began launching new vessels. Secret research facilities revealed technologies that pushed the boundaries of known science. The message was clear. Humanity had not just prepared to defend Earth. They had prepared to defend every human world, every human station, every human ship. Any species that threatened one human colony would face the wrath of all humanity. As news of the Sol massacre spread through galactic communication networks, civilizations across known space realized that the balance of power had fundamentally changed. The species they had dismissed as harmless traders were actually the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen, and they had been hiding in plain sight for centuries, waiting patiently for someone to be foolish enough to threaten their families. The reckoning was complete. Humanity had revealed their true strength, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from dozens of civilizations sat in stunned silence as holographic displays showed the aftermath of what historians were already calling the Sol massacre. Where the mighty, Zephyrian Grand Armada had once numbered over 1,000 ships, only scattered debris and emergency escape pods remained floating in Earth's orbital space. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of the chamber, but she was no longer the quiet diplomat who had sat through decades of meetings while other species made decisions about humanity's future. Everyone in the chamber now knew exactly who and what she represented. The small human woman in her simple gray uniform was the voice of the galaxy's apex predator. The Zephyrian Empire has formally surrendered, Sarah announced, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Their remaining military forces have been taken into custody, and their government has agreed to pay reparations to the human colonies they attacked. The war is over. Council Speaker Morden, ancient even by the standards of his long-lived species, spoke into the silence. Ambassador Chen, the Council requires answers. How long has humanity been deceiving us about your true nature? Sarah looked around the chamber at faces that had once dismissed her people as insignificant traders. We have never deceived anyone, Speaker Morden. We told you we were a peaceful people who preferred trade to war. That is still true. We told you we would defend ourselves if attacked. We have done exactly that. But your military strength, protested the Vorthan representative, his tentacles writhing with agitation. Your fleets, your weapons, your fortifications. How did you hide such power from us? We didn't hide it, Sarah replied calmly. You simply chose not to see it. Every time we established a colony, we told you we were building defenses. Every time we expanded our territory, we warned you that we would protect our people. Every time we negotiated a treaty, we included clauses about our right to self-defense. You heard what you wanted to hear and ignored the rest. War Marshal Thekvar of the Krillian hegemony leaned forward in his seat. His massive reptilian form dwarfed most other beings in the chamber, but his voice carried a new tone of respect when he spoke. Ambassador, the Krillian hegemony wishes to formally request military training exchanges with humanity. We have much to learn from your tactical innovations. Sarah nodded. The offer will be considered, but understand, Marshal, that human military doctrine is based on principles your people may find difficult to accept. We do not fight for glory or honor. We fight to win, to survive, and to protect our families. Everything else is secondary. The Etherian Collective's representative, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, pulsed with colors that indicated deep emotion. The Collective requests a formal alliance with humanity. We have always been a peaceful species, but recent events have shown us that peace requires strength to maintain it. Agreed, Sarah replied. Immediately. Humanity has always believed that peaceful species deserve protection from those who would prey upon them. We are prepared to extend our defensive umbrella to any civilization that shares our values. Across the chamber, representatives began talking among themselves in dozens of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up as species that had dominated galactic politics for millennia suddenly found themselves repositioning their relationships with humanity. The small, quiet species they had ignored was now the most powerful military force in known space. On the distant world of Kepler 442, Governor Patricia Walsh stood in what had once been her colony's administration building. Now it was revealed as the command center for one of humanity's most sophisticated military installations. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the massive defensive platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment for 20 years. Her aide approached with a communication pad. "Governor, we're receiving formal diplomatic requests from 17 different species. They all want to establish embassies here." Patricia smiled. 3 months ago, they wouldn't return our calls when we needed trade agreements. Now they want embassies. How many are offering military alliances? All of them, ma'am. The Stellar Republic is offering exclusive technology sharing agreements. The Outer Rim Federation wants to hire human ships as convoy escorts. Even the pirate clans are requesting non-aggression pacts. The transformation was remarkable. Humanity had gone from being dismissed as harmless traitors to being courted by every major power in the galaxy. But Patricia understood that this change came with responsibilities that her people were only beginning to understand. On Earth, Admiral Chen Wei walked through the corridors of the Deep Space Command Center, observing her staff as they coordinated humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Display screens showed human ships throughout known space, no longer hiding their true nature. The age of deception was over. Now came the more difficult task of managing the consequences. "Admiral," her intelligence chief approached with a secure datapad. "We're receiving reports from our embassy on Nexus Prime. 17 species have requested defense treaties in the last 48 hours. The Vorthon Confederacy is offering to share their hyperdrive technology in exchange for protection from the Krillian hegemony. The Stellar Republic wants to purchase human weapon systems." Chen Wei studied the reports. "What about the smaller species? The ones who have been caught between the major powers?" "They're the most eager of all, ma'am. The Kepler Federation, the Outer Rim Trading Company, the Independent Worlds Alliance. They're all asking to be included in what they're calling the Human Protection Zone." This was exactly what Chen Wei had hoped would happen. For too long, the galaxy had been dominated by large military powers that bullied smaller civilizations. The revelation of humanity's true strength offered an opportunity to create a different kind of galactic order, one based on protection rather than predation. "Draft a proposal for the Galactic Council," she ordered. "A mutual defense agreement for any species that wants to join, full protection from aggression in exchange for peaceful cooperation and respect for sentient rights." On the bridge of the ISO, Krillian battleship Razor's Edge, War Marshal Thekvar studied intelligence reports about human military capabilities with a mixture of admiration and concern. His species had always prided themselves on being the galaxy's greatest warriors. Now they were faced with the reality that they had been sharing space with predators far more dangerous than themselves. "Marshal," Submarshal Kretok approached, with a tactical analysis. "Our intelligence services have completed their evaluation of human combat effectiveness. The results are disturbing." Thekvar looked up from his datapad. "Disturbing how?" "Every engagement we've analyzed shows the same pattern. Humans don't just defeat their enemies, they completely outmaneuver them. Their tactical thinking is so far ahead of conventional warfare that most species can't even understand what they're doing until it's too late." The War Marshal nodded grimly. "What does the High Command recommend?" "Full alliance with humanity, Marshal. If we can't defeat them, we should join them. Better to be allied with the apex predator than to be prey for it." It was a hard truth for a proud warrior species to accept, but Thekvar had studied enough battle recordings to know it was the right decision. The Krillians had always believed that strength came from superior firepower and warrior courage. The humans had shown them that the greatest strength came from superior thinking and careful preparation. Back on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Sarah Chen met with a small group of representatives from species that most of the galaxy forgot existed, the Gentle Builders, who created beautiful crystal cities but had no weapons. The archive keepers, who maintained the galaxy's historical records but had no military force. The healers of Tau Ceti, whose medical knowledge was legendary, but who had never fought a war. "You are all welcome under humanity's protection," Sarah told them. "But understand what this means. We will defend you from aggression, but we will not fight your wars for you. We will protect your right to exist, but you must continue to contribute your unique gifts to galactic civilization." The representative of the Gentle Builders, a fragile crystalline being whose species had been conquered twice in the last century, spoke in tones like wind chimes. "What do you ask in return for this protection?" "Nothing that you are not already willing to give," Sarah replied. "Continue building your beautiful cities. Continue sharing your architectural knowledge. Simply exist and thrive as you always have. The galaxy is richer for your presence, and we will ensure that no one can take that away from you again." This was humanity's vision for the new galactic order. Not conquest or domination, but protection for those who needed it, and cooperation with those who wanted it. The species that had hidden their true nature for 50 years were now using their revealed strength to create a safer galaxy for everyone. But not everyone was happy with this new arrangement. In the shadowy corners of galactic space, older powers began to plan and scheme. The Void Syndicate, mysterious beings from beyond the galactic rim, watched human expansion with growing concern. The Ancient Ones, who had ruled parts of the galaxy before most current species had achieved spaceflight, began to stir from their long slumber. Admiral Chen Wei knew that humanity's revelation of their military strength was not an ending. It was a beginning. There were threats in the galaxy that even humanity had not yet encountered, ancient powers that would not be impressed by human technology or tactics. The real test of human strength was yet to come. But for now, the galaxy was learning to live with a new reality. The quiet species from the small blue world had become the dominant military force in known space. They had achieved this not through conquest or aggression, but through patience, preparation, and the willingness to defend what they valued most. The moment when humans revealed their true military force had passed. The galaxy had trembled in silence as it realized what had been hiding among them all along. Now came the more difficult task of building a future where that strength could be used not for war but for peace. And in the depths of space, on ships that no longer needed to hide their true nature, human crews looked out at the stars with quiet satisfaction. They had kept their promise to their ancestors. Humanity would never again be helpless in the face of aggression. The children of Earth were finally free to explore the galaxy without fear, protected by the strength their parents had built in secret across the generations. The new galactic order had begun, and humanity stood ready to shepherd it toward a brighter future for all sentient beings.
The giant ship appeared above Earth without warning, was bigger than any mountain, longer than the biggest cities, and darker than the deepest night. The ship had no lights except for the red glow that came from strange symbols on its black metal sides. It looked like death itself had come to visit. Admiral Kethfer stood on the bridge of the void, and looked down at the small blue planet below. He was tall and covered in green scales that looked like armor. His yellow eyes had seen many worlds surrender without a fight. This would be no different. For 3,000 years, the Void Render had traveled between stars. It never needed to fire its weapons. The ship was so scary that entire planets would give up the moment they saw it. Kethfer had watched hundreds of species fall to their knees and beg for mercy. Some cried, some screamed. All of them surrendered. The ship was built to be terrifying. The outside was covered with the bones of dead alien species. Strange faces were carved into the metal, faces of creatures that no longer existed. The engines made sounds like screaming ghosts. Even Kethfer's own people were afraid when they saw the Void Render. Today was supposed to be easy. The reports said humans were simple creatures. They lived on one small planet and had not learned to travel between stars yet. They had primitive weapons that could barely destroy their own cities. They should be terrified. Kethfer pressed a button on his control panel. His voice would now reach every human on the planet below. Primitive species of the third planet, he said in perfect English. His computers had learned their language in minutes. You have been chosen to join the galactic hegemony. Give us your governments. Give us your resources. Give us everything you have. You have 1 day to surrender, or we will destroy you all. He waited for the panic to begin. He expected to see their cities go dark as their leaders hid in bunkers. He expected desperate messages, begging for mercy. He expected fear. What he heard instead made no sense, laughter at first. Kethvar thought his translation computers were broken. But no, the sounds coming from the planet were definitely laughter. Millions of humans were laughing at his threat. Lieutenant Yextal, a young officer with bright blue scales, looked at his screen with confusion. Sir, the humans are. They are making joke sounds. What? Kethvar could not believe what he was hearing. They're laughing, sir, and they are making something they call memes. Look at this. On the main screen, Yextal showed pictures that humans were sharing on their communication networks. One picture showed the void render with silly eyes drawn on it. Another showed a human pointing at the ship with text that said, finally, something interesting happened in 2025. Kethvar watched in shock as more and more humans shared jokes about his ship. Someone had made a song about alien invasion, and it was spreading across their entire planet. Another human had drawn a picture of the void render being attacked by their primitive flying machines, but the planes were drawn as tiny birds. Sir Yextal said, they have something called #AlienInvadersBingo. They are making it a game. A game, Kethvar's voice got louder. They think this is a game? The communication officer, a creature with too many eyes, spoke up. Admiral, we are receiving thousands of messages from the planet, but none of them are surrender offers. What? Are they saying? Well, sir, one human leader sent a message that says, thanks for the light show, but we're kind of busy right now. Can you come back next week? Another one asks if we accept payment in something called Bitcoin. Kethvar felt his scales turn a darker green, which happened when he was angry. In 3,000 years, no species had ever responded to the void render with jokes. No one had ever asked them to come back later. No one had ever treated galactic conquest like it was an inconvenience. Show me their news broadcasts, he ordered. The screen filled with images from human news stations. Instead of panic, Kethvar saw reporters standing in front of cameras, smiling. One female human was speaking cheerfully while the void render hung in the sky behind her. This is Sarah Johnson reporting from New York City, where the mysterious alien ship continues to hover above Earth. Citizens are gathering in Central Park for what they're calling an end-of-the-world viewing party. Local pizza shops report record sales, and the mayor has declared today an unofficial holiday. Another channel showed a male human in a white coat. The alien ship appears to be using some kind of gravity manipulation technology. From an engineering perspective, this is absolutely fascinating. We're learning more about advanced physics in 1 day than we have in the last 50 years. Kethvar changed to another channel. This one showed humans holding signs. But instead of signs begging for mercy, they were holding signs that said things like, "Take me to your leader," and "Aliens welcome. Just don't park there." One old human man was being interviewed. The reporter asked him if he was scared. Scared? The old man laughed. Son, I lived through 3 wars, 2 divorces, and 40 years of taxes. A big, scary spaceship. That's just Tuesday. Sir, Lieutenant Yextal said quietly, perhaps the humans do not understand the danger they are in. Kethvar was beginning to think the same thing. These creatures were clearly too stupid to be afraid. He would have to show them the power of the void render. Prepare the fear cannon, he ordered. The fear cannon was the void render's most terrible weapon. It did not destroy things with fire or energy. Instead, it sent pure terror directly into the minds of every living creature on a planet. No species had ever resisted it. After one blast from the fear cannon, entire civilizations would beg to surrender. But as the weapon charged up, something strange happened. The laughter from Earth got louder. Someone on the planet had started a countdown. Millions of humans were counting down to the deadline together, like they were waiting for fireworks to begin. They were not counting down to their doom. They were counting down to a show. Cuthbert stared at the planet below and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt confused. The first time in 3,000 years, the Voidrender had met a species that refused to be afraid. And somehow, that made Kethver very afraid indeed. Admiral Kethver decided to show the humans real power. They were clearly too stupid to understand words, so he would speak in the language of destruction. He would destroy something big enough that even these laughing creatures would finally understand their situation. Target the small rocky body near their moon, he ordered. Use the plasma cannon. Make it bright enough that every human can see it. The weapons officer nodded and aimed at a small asteroid floating in space. The Voidrender's massive cannon charged up with red energy. A beam of pure fire shot out and hit the asteroid. The rock exploded into 1,000,000 pieces, creating a brilliant light show that could be seen from Earth even during the day. Kethver smiled with satisfaction. Now the humans would see what real power looked like. Now they would understand that their little planet could be next. He waited for the screaming to begin. Instead, he heard cheering. Sir, Lieutenant Yextal said, looking at his screens with wide eyes. The humans they are celebrating. What do you mean celebrating? They think we just gave them a fireworks show. Look, the main screen showed humans all over there. Planet pointing up at the sky, where the asteroid had exploded.
Ow.
They were taking pictures. They were cheering. They were calling their friends to come outside and look. In one city, thousands of humans had gathered on rooftops to watch. Someone had brought speakers and was playing music. People were dancing. It looked like a festival. This is incredible, said a human scientist on their television. The aliens just demonstrated technology that's centuries ahead of anything we have. The energy output from that blast could power our entire planet for a year. This is the greatest scientific discovery in human history. Another human was selling something called T-shirts with pictures of the explosion on them. The words on the shirts said, "I survived the alien warning shot and all I got was this lousy T-shirt." Kethver's scales turned an even darker green. Are selling clothing about our demonstration of power? Yes, sir. They've also made it into something called a meme. Answer. Yextel paused. They have started rating our explosion. Most humans give it 7 out of 10 stars. Say it was pretty good, but they have seen better fireworks. Better fireworks? Kethver's voice was getting very loud now. We just vaporized a mountain-sized rock with one shot. Yes, sir. But humans say their New Year celebrations are more impressive. While Kethver tried to understand how destroying an asteroid could be less impressive than human celebrations, something else was happening on Earth. The humans were not just laughing anymore. They were working. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her command center deep under the Pacific Ocean. She was a small human with short gray hair and eyes that never showed fear. Around her, dozens of other humans worked at computers and communication devices. Status report, she said calmly. All military bases are responding, said Colonel Martinez. Every ship, every plane, every soldier we have is ready to move. What about the scientists? Dr. James O'Coffer appeared on a video screen. He was a tall human with dark skin who worked in a place called Lagos. Behind him, other scientists were working frantically with computers and strange equipment. Admiral Chen, Dr. O'Coffer said with excitement in his voice, we have been studying the energy readings from their demonstration. I have some very interesting news. Tell me. The alien ship is not as dangerous as it wants us to think. Yes, it has powerful weapons. But the way it uses energy tells me something important. This ship is built to scare people, not to fight. Real wars. Admiral Chen leaned forward. Explain. Think of it like this, Dr. Okafor said. Imagine you built a car that looks very scary and makes loud noises, but it cannot actually drive very fast. The alien ship is like that car. It looks terrifying, and it can blow up asteroids, but its defenses are not as strong as they appear. How can you be sure? The energy patterns, Admiral? When they fired their weapon, I detected something interesting. Most of their power goes to making the ship look scary and making threatening sounds. Only a small part goes to actual weapons and shields. They have been bullying people for so long that they forgot how to really fight. Admiral Chen smiled for the first time since the aliens arrived. Dr. Okafor, please send this information to every military base and every scientist on Earth. If we are going to die today, we might as well make it interesting. Within hours, Dr. Okafor's discovery spread across the planet. Military leaders began making new plans. Engineers started building new weapons. Computer programmers began writing special software. But the most important thing happened in the minds of ordinary humans. When they learned that the scary alien ship was mostly for a show, they stopped being impressed and started being annoyed. "So let me understand this," said a human comedian on television. "These aliens traveled across the galaxy in a ship that is basically a really expensive way to say, be afraid of us. That is like driving a tank to the grocery store because you want people to think you are tough?" The audience laughed. But it was a different kind of laughter now. Before, humans had laughed because the situation was so strange. Now they laughed because they realized the aliens were not as smart as they pretended to be. On the void render, Kethver watched as human military forces began to move. But they were not running away or hiding in bunkers. They were moving toward his ship, sir, said the communications officer. "We are detecting small spacecraft launching from the planet. They appear to be heading directly toward us." "Suicide attacks?" Kethver asked. Finally, the humans were showing proper fear. "Unknown, sir. But, sir, they are still laughing." Kethver looked at the screen showing the approaching human ships. He could hear radio communications between the human pilots. They were joking with each other. They were making bets about who could get closest to the void render. One pilot was singing a song. "This is insane," Kethver said. "No species behaves like this, sir," Lieutenant Yextel said quietly. "What if that is exactly the problem?" Kethver turned to look at his young officer. "What do you mean? What if we have been conquering the wrong kind of species? What if there are creatures in the galaxy who cannot be scared because they think differently than we do?" Time in his long life, Admiral Kethver began to wonder if the void render had finally met something it could not intimidate. And that thought scared him more than any weapon ever could. The deadline was almost here. Admiral Kethver had given the humans 24 hours to surrender, and now only 2 hours remained. He expected to see their leaders begging for mercy on every communication channel. Instead, he saw something that made no sense at all. The humans were preparing for war. "Sir," Lieutenant Yextal reported, "we are detecting massive movement across their planet. Their military forces are not hiding. They are moving toward launch positions." "Launch positions?" Kethver studied the readings. How could they possibly launch at us? "Their weapons are primitive. Nuclear devices, sir. Hundreds of them. They are loading them onto small spacecraft and aiming them at our ship." Kethver laughed. "Nuclear weapons? Those ancient toys? Our shields can stop 1,000 nuclear explosions without even noticing." But as he watched the human preparations, something bothered him. The humans were not acting like a species about to make a desperate last attack. They were acting like they had a plan. On Earth, Admiral Chen stood in her command center, watching dozens of screens. Each screen showed a different part of the human plan. Military bases were launching rockets. Space stations were being turned into weapons. Even old satellites were being given new jobs as fighters, Admiral said. "Colonel Martinez, all launch sites report ready. We have 300 nuclear missiles aimed at the alien ship," Good Admiral Chen said. "And the real plan?" Dr. Okafor appeared on the main screen. Behind him, hundreds of computer programmers were typing frantically. "Almost ready, Admiral. We just need a few more minutes." "What exactly are we doing?" asked Colonel Martinez. "I understand the missiles are a distraction, but what is the real attack?" Dr. Okafor smiled. "We are going to use the aliens' own weapon against them." "Colonel, that ship is not just a weapon. It is a communication device. Connects to the mind of every person on a planet to make them afraid. But what if we could reverse that connection?" "Reverse it how?" "What if instead of the ship putting fear into our minds, we could put our thoughts into the ship?" Admiral Chen understood immediately. "You want to hack their fear weapon?" "Exactly. But not with normal computer virus. We are going to hack it with something the galaxy has never seen before. We are going to hack it with humanity." On the void render, Kethver watched the human missiles launch. Finally, he thought, they were acting normally. Even if their weapons were weak, at least they were showing proper fear by attacking desperately. "Sir," said the weapons officer, "should we destroy the incoming missiles?" "Not yet," Kethfer said. "Let them come close. When their weapons fail against our shields, it will break their spirit completely. Then they will surrender." But Kethfer did not know about the real human plan while he watched the obvious missiles. Human computer experts were doing something that should have been impossible. They were breaking into the Void Render's communication systems, but they were not using normal hacking methods. They were using something much more dangerous. They were using the internet. Dr. Okafor had discovered that the Void Render's fear weapon worked by connecting to planetary communication networks. It would send scary thoughts through television, radio, and internet to reach every person on a planet. But the humans had spent the last day doing something clever. They had filled their entire internet with the most powerful thing they knew. They had filled it with humanity itself. Every funny video humans had ever made. Every song about fighting against impossible odds. Every story about people who refused to give up. Every joke about death and danger. Every meme about being brave when everything looked hopeless. All of it was now connected and ready. 30 seconds until missile impact, reported Colonel Martinez. "Perfect," said Dr. Okafor. "Activating the virus now?" On the Void Render, Kethfer prepared to watch the human weapons bounce harmlessly off his shields. The fear cannon was ready to fire the moment the missiles failed. One blast would fill every human mind with terror, and this embarrassing situation would finally be over. The missiles struck the Void Render's shields and exploded in brilliant flashes of light. As expected, they did no damage at all. "Now fire the fear cannon," Kethfer ordered. "End this." The fear cannon activated. It reached out through space to connect with Earth's communication networks, prepared to flood human minds with pure terror. Instead, something incredible happened. The moment the fear cannon connected to Earth's internet, it was hit by the combined force of human culture. 8 billion people worth of jokes, songs, stories, and memes flowed backwards through the connection into the Void Render systems. The ship's computer, which had been designed to create fear, suddenly found itself trying to process something. It had no way to understand, tried to analyze human comedy and could not figure out why people laughed at danger. It tried to understand human music about fighting hopeless battles, and could not figure out why humans would fight when they knew they would lose. Worst of all, it tried to understand human memes. The ship's artificial intelligence, which had been trained on the fear of 1,000 conquered species, was suddenly flooded with images of humans making jokes about everything. Jokes about death, jokes about aliens, jokes about being afraid, even jokes about the Void Render itself. Sir Lieutenant Yextel said with panic in his voice, "Something is wrong with our systems." Kethfer looked at his control panels. Lights were flashing everywhere. But instead of normal error messages, the screens were showing human memes. One screen showed a picture of a small Earth animal called a cat, with words that said, "Icon has galactic conquest." "What is happening?" Kethfer demanded. "The fear cannon is overloading," reported the weapons officer. "Cannot process the data it is receiving from the planet." "What kind of data, sir?" "It appears to be jokes. Millions and millions of jokes. And something called funny cat videos." Another screen flickered and showed a human video. In the video, a man was standing in front of an explosion, but instead of running away, he was walking toward the camera in slow motion while music played. The words at the bottom said, "Humans do not run from explosions. Explosions run from humans." Kethfer stared at the video. It made no sense. No species walked toward explosions. No species made entertainment about being brave in the face of certain death. No species filled their communication networks with jokes about their own destruction. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we are receiving a message from the planet." "Put it on screen." Admiral Chen appeared on the main display. She was sitting calmly in her command center, and she was smiling. "Hello there," she said cheerfully. "I hope you are enjoying our little gift. You see, you made one small mistake when you tried to scare us. You connected your fear weapon to the internet. The internet, as you are probably discovering, is a very strange place." Behind Admiral Chen, Dr. Okafor waved at the camera. "Call this a logic bomb," he said. "Your computer is trying to understand humanity, but humanity cannot be understood. It can only be experienced. You are experiencing all of it at once." Admiral Chen leaned forward and looked directly at Kethfer. "You want to know what makes humans different? Do not fight because we think we can win. We fight because some things are worth fighting for, even if we lose. Apparently your ship's computer is learning that lesson right now." Kethfer looked around his bridge. Half of his systems were offline. The other half were showing human jokes. And somewhere in the ship's computer, an artificial intelligence that had conquered a galaxy was trying to figure out why humans thought everything was funny. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Void Render was not in control of the situation. The virus spread faster than Admiral Kethfer could understand. What had started as a simple hack of the Void Render systems was becoming something much bigger. The ship's communication array was still connected to the galactic network, and now human culture was flowing through it like water through a broken dam. "Sir," Lieutenant Yextel said, his voice shaking, "the virus has reached the galactic communication grid. It is spreading to other hegemony ships." Kethfer watched his screens in horror. The Void Render was not just receiving human jokes and videos. It was sending them out to every corner of the galaxy. Every hegemony base, every conquered world. Every slave colony was now receiving the same flood of human defiance that had broken his ship's systems. "Cut all external communications," he ordered. "I cannot, sir. The systems are not responding to commands. They are only responding to—" Lieutenant Yextel paused, looking embarrassed. "Responding to what? To memes, sir?" On the planet Zephyr 7, insectoid workers had labored in the crystal mines for 200 years without hope. Their people had surrendered to the hegemony long ago, and they had accepted that freedom was impossible. But now, strange signals were coming through their work communication devices. Zakdal was pulling a heavy cart of crystals when his communication implant activated. Instead of work orders from his hegemony overseer, he heard something incredible. Music. Human music about fighting when everything seemed lost. The translation device in his head converted the human words. "We will rock you. We will rock you. Somebody better put you back into your place." Other workers stopped what they were doing. They'd never heard anything like this. The music was followed by a voice, clear and strong. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth," the voice said. "If you are hearing this message, it means you live. Under hegemony control, we want you to know something important. You do not have to be afraid anymore." Zakdal looked at his fellow workers. IV. For the first time in 2 centuries, he saw something in their eyes that had been missing. He saw hope. On the academic world of Kepler 4 for to be, Professor Maldus had spent 50 years teaching young aliens about the glory of the hegemony. It was safe work. It paid well. And most importantly, it kept him from being sent to the labor camps. But now his classroom computers were showing him something that changed everything. Human scientists were explaining how to analyze hegemony technology. They were showing weaknesses in hegemony weapons and ships. They were teaching resistance. Dr. James O'Coffer appeared on his screen, smiling warmly. "Hello, friends, across the galaxy. My name is James, and I am a human scientist. Today I want to teach you something very important. The scary ships that conquered your worlds are not as powerful as they want you to think." Professor Maldus had never seen anyone speak about the hegemony this way. Dr. Okafor talked about their masters like they were. It's just another engineering problem to be solved. "The key thing to understand," Dr. Okafor continued, "is that bullies are usually afraid of something. In this case, the hegemony is afraid of you. They are afraid that if you stop being scared, you will realize that there are more of you than there are of them." In the prison camps of Wriggle 12, political prisoners who had fought against the hegemony decades ago were seeing something they thought they would never see again. Resistance. The guards tried to shut down the communication systems, but it was too late. The human virus had infected everything. Prisoners were learning that somewhere in the galaxy, a species called humans had looked at the Void Render and laughed. Zelenara had been in prison for 30 years. She had led a rebellion on her home world and failed. She had watched her people surrender and give up hope. But now she heard human voices singing songs. about fighting impossible battles and refusing to surrender. One song particularly caught her attention. The humans called it "Don't Stop Me Now." It was about feeling so alive and free that nothing could stop you. Zelenara began to smile for the first time in 30 years. Back on the Void Render, Admiral Kethfer was learning what panic felt like. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Slave worlds were stopping work. Academic planets were teaching resistance instead of obedience. Prison camps were experiencing riots. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we are receiving messages from Hegemony High Command. They are ... They are very angry. Put them through." The screen showed Supreme Commander Veltar, the most powerful leader in the Hegemony. His purple skin was dark with rage, and his 6 eyes were all focused on Kethfer. "What have you done?" Veltar roared. "Reports are coming in from every sector. Our subjects are rebelling. They are using tactics they learned from these humans." "How did one primitive planet cause this much damage?" Kethfer tried to explain, but he was not sure he understood it himself. "Supreme Commander, the humans are ... different. They do not respond to fear the way other species do." "Different how?" "They laugh at death, sir. They make jokes about impossible situations. They fight even when they know they cannot win. Somehow this attitude is spreading to other species. That is impossible. Fear is universal, intelligent. Life responds to fear. Not humans, sir. They respond to fear by making memes about it." Veltar stared at Kethfer for a long moment. "Memes? Funny pictures with words, sir? They use them to make serious situations seem less serious?" "It is their primary weapon? Their primary weapon is funny pictures." "Yes, sir, and it is working." On Earth, Admiral Chen was receiving reports from around the world. Every major military installation was reporting the same thing. The alien ship was still hanging in space above them, but it was no longer threatening. Its systems were too busy processing human culture to function as a weapon. Admiral Dr. Okafor said, "We are receiving communication signals from across the galaxy. Dozens of species are using our broadcast to coordinate resistance movements. The hegemony is losing control of entire star systems." Admiral Chen smiled. When the day had started, Earth was facing invasion by the most powerful force in the galaxy. Somehow, they had accidentally started a galactic revolution. "Dr. Okafor," she said, "I need you to do something important." "What is that, Admiral?" "Need you to make our broadcast stronger? If we are going to overthrow a galactic empire by accident, we might as well do it properly." Colonel Martinez looked confused. "Admiral, are we actually trying to liberate the galaxy now?" Admiral Chen looked at the screens showing reports of rebellion from 100 different worlds. She thought about species that had been enslaved for centuries, suddenly remembering what freedom felt like. She thought about the hegemony's 3,000-year reign of terror coming to an end because humans had taught the galaxy how to laugh. "Colonel," she said, "I think the galaxy was never really asking to be liberated. It was asking to remember how to liberate itself. We just reminded everyone that empires built on fear can be destroyed by hope." "And memes," Dr. Okafor added helpfully. "And memes," Admiral Chen agreed. Above Earth, the Void Render continued to broadcast human culture to every corner of the galaxy. For 3,000 years, it had been a weapon of conquest. Now it had become something completely different. It had become a beacon of freedom. And across the galaxy, species that had forgotten how to dream were beginning to remember that some things were worth fighting for, even when victory seemed impossible. 3 months had passed since the Void Render first appeared above Earth. The galaxy was no longer the same place it had been before humans taught it how to laugh. Admiral Kethfer sat alone in his command chair, looking at reports that told a story he could barely believe. The hegemony was falling apart. Not from military defeat, but from something much worse. Their subjects had stopped being afraid. On Zephyr 7, the insectoid workers had thrown down their mining tools and declared their freedom. The hegemony had sent troops to restore order, but the soldiers found something they had never encountered before.
Oh.
The workers were not just rebelling. They were singing human songs while they did it. On Kepler 4, for 2b. Professor Maldus was no longer teaching about hegemony glory. Instead, he was teaching young aliens how to build communication devices that could not be controlled by their masters. His students called it Earth technology. They were sharing the designs with other worlds. The prison camps of Rigel 12 were empty. Zelenara had led a breakout that freed every political prisoner in the system. But instead of running and hiding, the former prisoners had taken over the communication stations and were broadcasting human music to nearby worlds. Lieutenant Xtel approached Kethfer's chair carefully. "Sir, we have received new orders from Supreme Commander Veltar. What does he want now? He wants us to destroy Earth immediately. He says the human contamination must be stopped before it spreads further." Kethfer looked at the small blue planet below. For 3 months, he had been trying to fix his ship's systems. The human virus was still there, buried so deep in the computer networks that it could not be removed. Every day, his ship continued to broadcast human culture to the galaxy, and every day, more worlds joined the rebellion. "Sir," Yextel said quietly, "there is something else. We have been receiving messages." "What kind of messages?" "From other hegemony ships, sir. Some of them are ... asking to join the rebels." Kethfer turned to stare at his young officer. "Crew of the destroyer-class ship Iron Fist sent a message yesterday. They said they were tired of conquering people who just wanted to be free. They asked if Earth would accept their surrender, and Admiral Chen said yes, sir. She welcomed them to what she calls the Free Galaxy Alliance. She even sent them a package of human entertainment as a welcome gift." Kethfer felt something he had never experienced before. Felt tired. Not physically tired, but tired in his soul. For his entire life, he had served the hegemony without question. He had believed that order was more important than freedom, that fear was stronger than hope. But now he had seen what happened when people stopped being afraid. He had watched as his ship, designed to be the ultimate weapon of terror, became a tool of liberation. He had seen species that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly remember how to dream. Sir Yextel said, "What are your orders?" Kethfer could answer, "The communication system activated." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. She looked exactly the same as she had 3 months ago, calm and confident. "Hello, Admiral Kethfer," she said with a slight smile. "I hope you have been well, Admiral Chen." Kethfer was surprised to find that he was glad to see her. "You contacted me to demand our surrender?" "Actually, no. I contacted you to say thank you." "Thank you. Your ship has been broadcasting our culture to the galaxy for 3 months now. Because of the Void Render, hundreds of worlds have learned that freedom is possible. Billions of people who had given up hope are now fighting for their rights. You have helped us liberate more people than any military fleet could have." Kethfer looked around his bridge. His crew was listening to every word. He could see something in their eyes that had not been there before. Doubt. Not doubt about their abilities, but doubt about whether what they had been doing was right. "What do you want from me, Admiral Chen? I want to ask you a question. Are you happy, Admiral Kethfer?" The question caught him completely off guard. "Happy? Yes. Are you happy serving an empire that rules through fear? Are you happy conquering people who just want to live their lives in peace? Are you happy being the person that everyone in the galaxy is afraid of?" Kethfer thought about the question. When was the last time he had been truly happy? When was the last time he had felt proud of what he was doing, instead of just doing it because it was his job? "I do not know," he said honestly. "Well," Admiral Chen said, "if you ever decide that you want to try something different, Earth would be happy to welcome you and your crew to the Free Galaxy Alliance. We can always use people who know how hegemony technology works. You would trust us after everything we have done." Admiral Kethfer, humans believe that people can change. We believe that someone who has done wrong things can choose to do right things. The question is, what do you choose? The communication ended, leaving Kethfer alone with his thoughts and his crew. 6 hours later, Void Render sent a message to every ship in the hegemony fleet. It was simple and direct. "This is Admiral Kethfer of the starship Void Render. After careful consideration, my crew and I have decided to join the Free Galaxy Alliance. We no longer wish to serve an empire built on fear. To any hegemony forces who wish to continue fighting, we will not stop you. To any hegemony forces who wish to join us, you are welcome. Act. The message was followed by something that no one in the galaxy had ever heard before. The crew of the Voidrender, led by Lieutenant Yextal, began to sing a human song. They sang, "We are the champions," and even though their alien voices could not pronounce all the words correctly, the meaning was clear. On Earth, Admiral Chen smiled as she listened to the broadcast. Dr. Okafor appeared on her screen grinning widely. "Admiral," he said, "we are receiving surrender messages from hegemony ships across the galaxy. Looks like our accidental revolution has become a real revolution. How many ships? At last count, about half the hegemony fleet. The other half is either still loyal to the old government or trying to decide which side to join." Admiral Chen looked out at the stars through her command center window. When this had all started, Earth was facing destruction by the most powerful force in the galaxy. Now, somehow, they had helped create a new galaxy where freedom was more powerful than fear. "Dr. Okafor," she said, "I need you to send a message to all the rebel worlds." "What should it say?" Admiral Chen thought for a moment, then she smiled. The same smile that had started everything 3 months ago. "Tell them that Earth sends its greetings to the Free Galaxy Alliance. Tell them that we are proud to fight alongside them. And tell them..." She paused, thinking of the right words. "Tell them that sometimes the best way to defeat your enemies is to help them become your friends. And if they ask what happens next..." Admiral Chen looked at the stars again, thinking about all the worlds out there where people were learning to be free for the first time in centuries. Tell them that happens next is up to them. That is what freedom means. Above Earth, the Voidrender continued its orbit, but it was no longer a weapon of conquest. It had become something the galaxy had never seen before. A ship of former enemies, working together to build something better, and across the galaxy. The sound of laughter continued to echo, the sound of people who had remembered that some things were worth fighting for even when victory seemed impossible, the sound of hope itself.